Good afternoon. Happy Friday, folks, for another edition of our Slate Breakdown show. Blaine and I joining you for week 14. How's it going, Blaine?
Pretty good. How you doing? Just
Not
got
too-
back from the gym.
Ooh,
I'm
nice.
feeling the pump, you know.
Did you work out in the Niners jersey, or is that a post-gym edition?
Post gym, Niners funeral week.
Yeah,
We're done, so I may as well wear the Jerry jersey one last time.
yeah.
We're putting it away for the year.
We'll get to them a bit later in the show. But starting out, let's talk about the Panthers at the Eagles. A pretty good matchup here for the Eagles, especially Saquon Barkley, who's been averaging some ridiculous numbers, like 150 yards and like a touchdown and a half per game over the past 3 or 4 weeks. Now facing the Panthers' dead last run defense. What are you seeing in this Eagles game?
Yeah, I mean the only real concern for the Eagles offense is just how long are they going to play. I mean, can the Panthers and Bryce Young has looked a lot better push them to force the starters to stay in the game? Because I don't really see any way that Panthers defense stops or slows down even this Eagles offense, especially now with Devontae Smith back. One more weapon for Hurts. I mean, I've said it all year. Saquon's got the best role in the league right now. They're going to keep feeding him until he gets hurt or they win the Super Bowl. So no real problems with playing him here, even at that salary and ownership.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bryce Young, like you said, has looked better in the past few weeks, albeit one of those games was against Buccaneers secondary, who's made a lot of quarterbacks look better than they are. Yeah. I worry about the Panthers' offense here against the Eagles and their ability to even sustain drives and just how long, like you said, how long is the game going to be competitive for? But there's always, if the game does get out of hand, like the spread indicates, there's going to be scoring involved in doing that. So there's still reason to roster these Eagles players, but you have to be a bit more careful about how you do it.
Yeah, definitely. I do think the Lions style onslaught here with Hurts, Barkley, and one of Brown or Devontae is in play. Maybe even you could do Hurts, Barkley. Where's Goddard? What's his salary?
Goddard is he's out. He's got a knee injury.
Oh, that's right. Oh, my fault. So you could do the cheap tight end with Hurts and Saquon, one receiver. I mean, and the Eagles defense really even.
Calcaterra at 3,500. We'll talk about tight end a bit later, but there's a lot of attractive tight end options, so I really don't see myself getting to Calcaterra. And then the Eagles have just not been a passing team since their bye. All they've done is pound the rock. I think they're last in PROE or near last in PROE as the season goes on.
Yeah, the only reason why I bring up the cheap tight end thing is the fourth player in that stack is just because Devontae's 6K. And AJ Brown's 8,100, so it's almost impossible to stack all four of those guys plus the Eagles defense. So,
yeah, salary is going to be tough to fit, Barkley and Hurts together. But if you can do it, more power to you. Otherwise, even at ownership, I think Saquon's a smash, and he's probably going to be in 100% of my lineups.
Yeah, I mean, I do see the value here in the Hurts Brown leverage stack off of Saquon. We've seen AJ Brown with like the 9 catch, 180 yard, 3 touchdown games before. Against teams that can't cover him one-on-one. So I don't mind that as a look in some of my lineups, like especially in the larger field stuff. But in the smaller field, power sweep style, the 5.55 million DraftKings, stuff like that with 5 to 10,000 entries, it's really tough for me to get away from Barkley.
Yeah, if you're going cheap tight end in this game, I think it's probably worth at least looking at Tommy Tremble over Grant Calcaterra, either as like a run back or if you're brave enough to Bryce Young as part of like a Bryce Young stack. Last week he had 8 targets for 77 yards. Not bad. And they're obviously going to have to be throwing here. So potential volume cheap guy there if you need it.
But man, playing Tommy Tremble just never feels good.
No, it doesn't. I did play him last week though in a Bryce Young stack, and it turned out fairly well. I just didn't have all the pieces together. Let's move on to the Saints at the Giants. Pretty tight spread here, although a low total. We have some injuries on both sides to talk about. Obviously, no Taysom Hill for the Saints. In games with and without Taysom Hill, the Saints have a 10-point scoring differential. So there's fewer offensive weapons. There's fewer ways for them to move the ball. We saw Taysom Hill passing, catching, running, basically playing every position they could, place him at. And without him, I think the offense is going to struggle quite a bit.
Yep, I'm with you there. Not much to say. I do think the Taysom Hill thing. I mean, you can say small sample size with the differential, but I do think he matters a lot to this offense. And I mean, this is just a pretty ugly game for me to be playing much of. I know we have the Kamara ownership. How many weeks now has Kamara been like 30 plus own at 8K? It feels like all year it's been like that.
Yeah, I mean, even with Jamal Williams coming back, he's continued to maintain his role. He's got a 90% snap rate and 30 opportunities the last time he played. So, I mean, the usage is obviously elite. And with no Taysom Hill, I'm guessing they're going to have to rely on him even more. I just do worry about the game in general. On the other side, we will have no Malik Neighbors and Drew Lock starting for the Giants. Could be an upgrade, could be a side grade compared to Tommy DeVito, but they're both just attempting, about 30 passes a game with like a 5-yard ADOT, and there's just really not a lot of urgency to pass on the Giants side. They're going to be featuring Tyrone Tracy quite a bit in the backfield, and I just kind of worry about the game in general being slow and sluggish and with limited scoring opportunities.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Kamara, it's just tough for me to have an opinion about him. I don't like the game, so I guess I'll be slightly under, but the pass catching volume is just so good for him, especially on DraftKings full PPR. FanDuel easier to get away from, obviously, but yeah, it's just tough to have an opinion on somebody like that where the role is really good, but the offense is terrible and the game environment's terrible.
Yeah, if I'm spending up, I definitely prefer the Saquon angle. He's more expensive, yeah, still owned, but the matchup's better for him and the workload is about the same. So
yeah.
Kamara keeps coming in lower every week. Yeah, I think people are just losing faith in the offense little by little, even though he's got a good role. It's just, especially this week, Kamara 8K versus Saquon at 9K. It's a hard click.
Yeah.
On the Saints side, I mean, the injury to Taysom Hill will open up obvious stuff for like Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson at tight end. Other than that, it's really just Marquez Valdez-Scantling as their primary receiver with, a little bit of Kevin Austin Jr. So.
Pretty ugly. I mean,
yeah,
not much you can really say. How much do you want to play Wandale here? I mean, the PPR.
Yeah, he's obviously going to have to step in a bigger role with Neighbors not there. But the concern with him is the same for me with Kamara. Is I don't have a lot of faith in this game producing a lot of offensive scoring and fantasy point opportunities for players. I think there's probably better options in that midfield for receivers.
What do you think about Slayton? I mean, pretty cheap, low own as a dart with Locke. I mean, it doesn't seem like Locke was afraid to throw the ball down the field to him during the Thanksgiving game.
Yeah,
so that helps.
I mean, outside of like an actual Drew Lock stack, I don't have a lot of interest in these receivers.
Yeah, the value is pretty good this week in general.
Yeah, with you there. That's about it. Not a lot for me for this game, just in general, like a stocking stuffer type of game.
Hey, you get Cole.
Yeah. Bills at the Rams. Pretty healthy total and a pretty healthy spread here. The problem I found when I was looking at this game is to stack either side, you have to spend so much money, and then the offense on the Bills side is obviously not concentrated. We've seen so many games in a row now where Josh Allen hits, his 25, 30-point game, and then who do you stack with him? And like all the other players are relatively priced up, and it's kind of hard to get to them and, bank on success when the offense is so spread out.
Yeah. I guess Shakir is kind of the number one target, but it hasn't meant much in this offense. They aren't afraid to give the ball to Cook either in the red zone. Now, just a tough game. I don't know. I don't really have much opinion about this one either. I mean, indoors is obviously a bump for the Bills compared to what we saw against the Niners, and they still scored 35 points or whatever it was, 38 points. So, I mean, They shouldn't have problems moving the ball down the field. It's just, do you play 6,000 Shakir with Josh Allen? You can't really do the Josh Allen James Cook stack.
I
mean, committed to uncorrelated parts.
I like getting to the Bills. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the upside there is tremendous, but you're going to have to mix and match and hope you get the combination right. I mean, the Bills, they'll have Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman back, so that, makes things even more tricky. I think if I'm taking a stab, I might just play like Josh Allen, Amari Cooper, and then, maybe Kincaid, maybe Shakir. Not too sure.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
On the Rams side, again, it's, Nakua and Kupp, 1A, 1B, but the salaries are kind of tough. Stafford is cheaper, so there's reasons to get there, but the Bills have been pretty good, middle of the field as far as pass defense goes, but they've been more susceptible against the run. So I think if I'm going to somebody from the Rams side, I kind of like Kyron Williams.
But that gets you right back to the problem we were just talking about. If you play Kyron, well, you have to do an Allen stack. Now who you put in the Allen stack? So
yeah, I mean, pricing just gets really tough.
Yeah, I wonder what happens. I wonder if Cup gets squeezed a little bit at 7K. I feel like people just want to play Puka from this offense, and as the pass catcher, I do wonder if there's room for Cup to go down to like below 10% here.
Yeah, I could see ownership kind of skewing, to the extremes on the sides there. In general, I mean, it's a good game to get to. I think stacking's good. It's harder to do, and the combinations aren't as secure as some of the other offenses we're going to talk about, where production is concentrated and pricing is pretty good.
Yeah.
Move on to Raiders at the Bucks. This is a game environment I actually kind of like targeting a bit this week in tournaments. We saw just last week Bryce Young able to look, at least competent against a Bucs secondary who's giving up lots of big plays and in general is leaky through the air. Remains pretty good against the run, but that's not something I'm targeting on the Raiders anyway. What I would be targeting is like an Aiden O'Connell, Brock Bowers, and Jacoby Myers stack. It's cheap. The matchup's good for them. Game script's good for them. And then their production is just so concentrated that low price stack could probably get you somewhere between 60 and 80 points as a grouping, and they're cheap enough where it's viable in tournaments.
Yeah. Man, playing AOC stacks just feels awful.
It does. It really
AOC
does.
2028, baby.
Bowers and Myers combined for 25, 25, and 22 targets in the last 3 games. Bowers is the best tight end according to Pro Football Focus against zone, which is Tampa's preferred coverage utilization scheme. So, I mean, 45 total, game could shoot out. I mean, the Raiders defense isn't good either, and Baker Mayfield's been known to sling the ball 40 times a game. Bucky Irving's looking better. Mike Evans is looking better. I mean, in general, there's a lot of pieces from this game that I'm going to want to get to as part of a game stack.
Yeah, I much prefer Bowers in GPP. Myers has a floor, but he kind of has a cap ceiling we've seen so far. He hasn't really had like a big, 10 for 120 or whatever. He's always kind of seen around like 7 catches, 70 yards, whatever. So I much prefer Bowers for the ceiling on GPP, especially considering ownership there.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Aiden O'Connell threw the ball like 45 times this game or more. I think in general, like the game's going to be faster pace. I think the Bucs, if the game doesn't, play out the way I want it to, and the stacks don't work, it's probably because the Bucs can control the game through the ground with Bucky Irving. But I'm going to feature him in my stacks as well. So I think there's upside to capture on both sides.
Yeah. Baker Evans also kind of feels like a nice leverage off of the Otten and Irving ownership. I don't mind that. I also think you could play Rachaad White with Baker because Rachaad White's kind of taken up a little bit more of the pass catching role with them. So I don't mind that either. It's like I'm the pivot away from Irving, but aside from that, I'm not that excited about this game, I guess, even though the Buccaneers defense is terrible. And you would think that the Raiders should be able to push a little bit, pushes Buccaneers offense.
Yeah, and Bucky and Rachaad are about half and half splitting snaps. It's just that, Bucky Irving has gotten more touches on those snaps and he's been more efficient with it. So, I mean, there's definitely pass for upside for both of them, but it's probably more likely for Bucky. But then again, the field also is there. So potential spots for leverage in tournaments if you want to go the other route.
Yeah, I mean, he's twice his own and $1,400 more expensive, but a similar-ish role. Not as good of a player, obviously, as we've seen from Irving so far this year. But I think it's an interesting way to get leverage here.
I'm with you. I like it. Let's move on to Falcons at Minnesota.
Cousins revenge.
Yeah. Cousins is going back to Minnesota.
Wash ass Cousins.
Man, I'm not quite sure what to think of the Vikings at this point in the season because both you and I have been rocking these Darnold Jefferson stacks for so long, and their defense is just so good that they're not forced to throw the ball really on offense, and they're kind of happy just pounding the rock and winning on defense. So we're seeing 25 pass attempts from Darnold per game and just a handful of Jefferson targets. Like he's not getting a ton of volume, but it's still hard to not play it because he's so efficient with his touches and the ceiling is still there that it makes sense in tournaments.
Yeah, and the Falcons are like 20 in the 20s in EPA per play against dropbacks. So that makes me like the passing game even more. I think Addison's a really nice play at 5,300 as like a direct pivot off of off of some of the higher owned players there. We saw Myers a second ago with high ownership, and Jawan Jennings as well. And Addison, we've seen his ceiling, so he looks like a nice play to me. I do kind of like this passing game for the Vikings, and I mean, what do you think about the Falcons' offense here? I mean, Cousins looked awful last week. I don't know. We might even get a half of him before we see some Penix.
Yeah, no, I mean, as much as people want to talk about the revenge game and Cousins going back, I think this defense is going to eat him alive. It's going to be really hard. The Vikings are generating pressure, in many different ways, and I don't think it's anything that the Falcons O-line is capable of dealing with.
Yeah, I agree there.
I mean,
28% ownership on Drake London feels oof.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I get it because he's basically like the 1A, 1B with him and Darnell Mooney, and the game script sets up to where they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, and it's easier to throw the ball on Minnesota than it is to run on them. And obviously we've seen Bijan getting a good amount of opportunities per game, but he's not really doing that well with him. And then there's always concerns about goal line work with him. So if you're going to attack the Falcons side, probably the passing game, but I mean the field's there as well. So.
Yeah, I mean Mooney also, just like Addison, looks like a nice play for receivers in that mid 5,000 range. Is a lower owned play that we've seen ceiling from.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just between London and Mooney in a vacuum, I think it's Mooney every time. It just gives you a bit more salary to spend up at running back, and like you said, you're fading some ownership on two receivers who kind of have similar roles in an offense and similar upside.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Heading to the NFC West to talk about the rematch between the Seahawks and the Cardinals. Last game they played wasn't very eventful, pretty low scoring, and not a great affair in general. But this time they'll be playing at the Cardinals at home. And in general, the Cardinals tend to do better. They got on the road in home splits. They score more points. Marvin Harrison Jr. Has scored 5 of his 6 touchdowns this year at home. So additions we'll have to look at for on the Seahawks side. I think Metcalf and Kenneth Walker both got limited practices or DNP'd on Thursday. I'm not sure. So questionable to go into it. And if they do play, I think I like this game a lot more. If they're out, then it's mostly going to be like a James Conner or Trey McBride situation for me on the Cardinals side.
Yeah. This Cardinals defense has been tough for me to figure out all year long. Like I think I said this a couple weeks ago, but they just don't have any real names on their defense, and they've been pretty solid all year. It seems like they're playing a lot way above their heads. But I can see the upside here, but for this game to shoot out, but I think we just talked about this game 2 weeks ago and it was like 16-6. So
yeah,
I want to play pieces from this game, but when I say play pieces, I want to stack this game. Obviously there's some pieces here that look good, like you just said. But,
yeah, I definitely wouldn't suggest like a 1 or 2 offer mini stack from this game. If I'm playing this, it's going to have to be all out. So, I mean, Seattle is still ranking high in both raw pass rate and PROE. It's not a spot where like I think the game's going to stay close and that there's a lot of scoring opportunities. But for me, it's probably going to start on the Seattle side passing game. And then also I do kind of like the Kyler stacks on the other side, like a Kyler, McBride, Marvin Harrison stack. Offers pretty good floor with McBride, but you also get the upside of Kyler rushing and Marvin Harrison catching long balls.
Yeah. Marvin Harrison, yet another receiver in that 5,000 to 6,000 range with no ownership. I mean, he's been so hard to figure out.
Yeah.
But as a dart compared to Drake London, he's more expensive and is 20+% higher owned. It makes sense.
Yeah. And if Kenneth Walker misses, Zach Charbonnet is going to step up into a bigger role, but the Cardinals have been pretty good on defense against the run lately. Like they're holding their opponents to like 100 yards or less in like the last 6 or 7 games. So I typically think that if you're going to attack from the Seattle side, it's probably through the air and not on the ground.
Yeah. Because that's really the only way this game shoots out is if Seattle is able to throw and kind of speed this thing up. Yeah,
I'm with you there. So definitely considerations there, but like we said, it's probably more of a game stack scenario than looking for a one-off or a mini correlation. Take a look at Jets at Miami. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, the Jets have looked terrible. Aaron Rodgers is not completing passes. They're not moving the ball down the field. They're not attempting passes really, and now they're gonna be missing Breece Hall, which puts a massive dent in their offense.
I'm surprised that we aren't seeing more ownership on Braylon Allen here with Breece Hall out. He's looked good in the primetime games the Jets have had, and he's only 5K. I mean, I would assume he's going to get just the same role that Breece Hall is already getting. So I'm surprised it's only 14%. I feel like I would be over that if I were entering lineups today.
Yeah, I'm guessing that ownership's going to creep up. I think I just loaded ETR in shortly after the news broke, so the projections are probably a little out of date. But yeah, I would expect that ownership to creep up a bit. Maybe, I mean, Isaac Guerrero we'll talk about later, but he's in that same range with Braylon Allen, where I think people are more likely to play him against a bad Bears run defense, and they're not going to play double spend down running back. So that kind of squeezes Braylon Allen against a Miami defense who's a little bit better against the run.
Yeah, that's good logic.
Yeah. Sauce Gardner's out for the Jets. So, I mean, maybe a bump for Tyreek. Is it finally Tyreek week? I'm not there. It's been Jonnu for the last 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, and Waddle too.
With the dash of Waddle, yeah, with the dash of Waddle.
So, I mean, I love getting to Tua stacks here. Jonnu and Waddle, as weird as it is to say, those would be my favorite stacking options.
Yeah, you can pair A-Chain as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You can pair A-Chain with Tua stacks.
I'm not sure. Like, we haven't seen a Tyreek explosion game really this season outside of like 1 week, and I don't think I can really get there until I see that again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it just hasn't been the same role for him in the offense.
I think they have legitimately switched the way they're playing offense, and it's worked out for McDaniel. And it's like, why would you switch it, right? They seem to be moving the ball well. Jonnu and Waddle look great, and A-Chain gives them a bit of leverage there. I don't know why they would change it.
Yep.
And they're at home. Tua typically performs better at home, like 27 points per game average at home, since coming back this season. So scoring opportunities here for sure, but I definitely like the Dolphins side over the Jets side. Maybe game stack and play Braylon Allen if he continues to be low owned as leverage off of Isaac Guerrero.
Yep, that makes sense. I like A-Chain at 8,200 in low ownership. I mean, people might be scared off by the Jets' name on defense. They haven't been nearly the same defense this year, but A-Chain gets their own efficiency anyway. So it gets there because he's able to break off a 40 or 50 yards runs or receptions. I don't mind that as a dart. His ceiling is extremely high as we've seen before, and he's low owned compared to some of the other running backs in the 8K range.
Yeah. Would be interesting. It's probably a hard click for people with, Saquon being a little bit more and then, Alvin Kamara being right next to him, but I definitely like him, not as leverage off of Saquon, but as leverage off of Alvin Kamara.
I agree.
Right on. Bears at the Woeful 49ers. Obviously you have to talk about this. Yeah, the season's not good. Not good.
No.
They'll be starting Isaac Guerrero at running back after CMC. Is he done? Is he done playing football? Or is he done being like a first-round football player in fantasy?
First round for sure. I mean, I would guess he'll be like a mid-round pick next year. Kind of depends on how his calf heals. PCL thing doesn't seem that big of a deal. I mean, it's like 6 weeks, I think they said. So, yeah, we'll see. I traded for him in Dynasty when he was coming back from the injury at first and my team was stacked because I had him, Henry, and A-Chain, and it was a non-PPR league. And so I thought I was just going to roll to the title, and then last week happened.
Yeah, this 49ers team has been weird all season. Lately, we've seen Juwan Jennings sort of have an increased role and probably will have more of an increased role here, especially out of the backfield. Deebo Samuel probably running more design runs. I mean, Isaac Guerrero is a big running back, and they'll probably feature him a lot. The Bears' run defense isn't good, and he's cheap, so Field's going to be there as well. And I think in general, they're probably going to have to rely on their run game quite a bit here.
Yeah, Jennings is clearly the preferred target for Purdy. I was just looking up real quick to see if the Bears are a heavy zone team, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And that traditionally has been the role that Deebo, the type of defense that Deebo does really well against. Now, obviously, he's been so bad, so disappointing for me personally the last few weeks. Just doesn't look like the same player. But if there's ever a spot for him to break out, this would be one against a heavy zone team. I mean, we can actually see it in ETR ceiling there in the way they have their standard deviation so high. So they see the ceiling there as well. But that's just a tough one to click on this week after how bad he's been and how Purdy just hasn't seemed to link up with him all year long.
Yeah, I think Deebo's interesting as like a bet on Shanahan possibly scheming more work for him as a rusher as opposed to a receiver.
I mean, you would have thought last week, though, right? Like, that was
Yeah,
the game to do it if you're going
yeah,
to scheme more rushing attempts, and they didn't run any for him.
yeah. And for what it's worth, Juwan Jennings has been really good against zone this season as well. So good matchup for him. And obviously the running game's good against the Bears always. Yeah. I mean, again, I played Caleb Williams stacks last week. I mean, obviously Eberflus out. I think I might get to some more Caleb stacks this week. I mean, 49ers are going to be without Fred Warner, right, and Nick Bosa. So potential leaks on the defense and playing the passing, game with a Isaac Grindo run back, I think is going to be a non-chalky way to do it. It's going to be a unique way to play Grindo. So I might, throw a couple of names in the hat as far as Chicago stacks go.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I haven't been like blown away by Garendo, and I could see this being more of a pass heavy game plan from San Francisco here with Jennings, Debo, and Kittle all healthy. And so I do think you can get there with double stacks with Purdy, and I do think you can. Well, I was going to say double stacks with Caleb, but we haven't really seen that hit. We've seen the single stacks hit, but not the double stacks except for last week.
Right.
So I like stacking the passing games in this one and kind of being a little under on Garendo. I think I'd much rather play Braylon Allen at a 14% ownership or whatever versus 27% Garendo.
Yeah, I like that as a way to get different in tournaments. Anything else you want to touch on in this game?
Not really. I mean, Kittle obviously is a tight end. We can talk about him later, but we've seen his ceiling as a tight end. He looks good. Odunze, God, when is it going to happen for him? When is he going to show his ceiling?
I don't know.
It's so frustrating.
I'll just play him every week until he hits.
Yeah.
Right on. Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Definitely an interesting matchup here. On paper, Steelers defense is really good, but we've seen both of these teams in like the last 3 or 4 or 5 games they played have all skewed towards the over. We've seen a lot of passing attempts. I mean, obviously from Jameis, but Russ has been throwing a bit more too. Team still remains pretty run heavy in general, but they will open up the passing a bit more if they're forced to, which obviously if Jameis is throwing the ball, he will be. If he's making his passes and getting the ball down the field, that could lead to a situation where this game starts throwing.
Yep. Judy to me looks like, everybody just saw him blow up on Monday Night Football, and that was like the game of his life, and it was the game he was most motivated for. He looks like an easy fade to me, and if he burns me this week, then fine. I just think there's a lot of receivers in that price range that we can get to that have similar ceilings, if not better ceilings, and they're not facing the Steelers defense, who I still respect.
Yeah, and there's going to be enough volume on the Browns offense for a number of players to hit. It could be Judy, but there's other options there with Elijah Moore or David Njoku.
I much prefer Njoku, even with there's a lot of tight end. I mean, this is a double tight end week. You could do double tight ends. There's enough ceiling, I think, there at tight end this week to do it.
I like Njoku quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, Jameis averaging 45 pass attempts, 340 yards, 2 TDs, and 2 ins per game since starting. So.
Yep. And Steelers defense obviously squarely in play, as we see in the ownership there. And you can't play Steelers defense with the Jameis stack, but you can play Steelers defense with Njoku, for example. I think you can get away with that.
I mean, I think you can play the Steelers regardless. I like him pretty much everywhere.
I don't know. And like a large field though, like in a 20,000 plus entry contest, I don't know if you can do it with the quarterback. I mean, obviously it would have worked on Monday night.
I mean, how many people are?
The Lord's going to help Jameis. Stop throwing pick sixes. Didn't you hear him?
Oh yeah, I mean, he's going to need a lot more than that. I think it's viable. I don't know. I still think people aren't playing. People know Jameis and opposing defenses, but I still don't think people are going to actually play it and click it. So I don't know. I could totally see, like, again, 2 turnovers through the air, 3-4 sacks, defensive touchdown. It's totally in the realm of possibilities, and still having Jameis put up a score that wins a tournament.
Yeah, what do you think about Najee here at 20% ownership?
It's rough at ownership. I liked the play initially before I sort of looked at ownership and all that, but it's still a timeshare between him and Jaylen Warren, and at ownership, it's kind of tough. I mean, for me, the slate is kind of mean for these running backs, where we've got 2 really cheap options that are viable, and then a bunch of spend up options as well. So it's really hard to get into this sort of 6K range for running backs.
Yeah, Warren, it seems like a pretty obvious leverage play off of Najee, but you got to think about the game states where Warren ends up being in the optimal lineup, which is Steelers are trailing, so you kind of have to throw out the Steelers defense, and then it's who you bring back with the Browns. But that's pretty tough in ownership for me. Najee at 20%.
Yeah, and you can get to Pickens too if you want to do like rest stacks on the other side. But
you didn't see the news? He's ducking Greg Newsome.
Oh yeah, jeez. George Pickens needs to be studied when he's done playing football. He needs to donate his brain. Yeah. Good stuff from him.
In college, he was fighting the DBs on run plays. When they were up by 40, he'd still do it at Georgia. He's amazing.
Yeah, there's all those memes on their 3-yard run to the right, and meanwhile in the end zone, George Pickens and the DB are having a WWE SmackDown. Yeah, I mean, not much else to talk about from this game. It's probably for me, it's the Cleveland's passing attack stack. Otherwise, maybe a Najee plus Jalen in Steelers defense, and in the scenario where they're able to control the game through the ground and the defense does well. But ownership kind of makes it hard to get there. So, Last game we're going to look at here: Jags at Tennessee. Man, this is a real. This should be the Super Bowl, man. Fire this game up for the Super Bowl.
Who's going to try to lose this game more?
Yeah,
Billy Levis or Doug Peterson?
I mean, I am continually shocked watching the Jags and Dougie P. And in general, I think Mac Jones is going to have a lot of troubles against the Titans defense here, who are typically they're really not that bad of a unit. And Mac Jones is terrible. I think he's going to have a lot of issues here.
Yeah, I mean, I continue to think the Titans are probably underrated right now by everybody. Levis just literally threw away another game against what game was it when he threw? I mean, it was 2 weeks ago. I'm thinking of the wrong game. Anyway, he's thrown away 3 or 4 games this year alone, just individual plays that lose the game. So I mean, they could have a way better record than they currently have if he had made 4 plays. So I do think they're a little underrated. Ridley Levis stacks, you in?
I was more on the running side with Tony Pollard. I kind of like it there. Yeah, I mean, even with Tajay back, I think that in general, Tony Pollard can get there. What I can't do is go back to the Nick Westbrook-Akine game. I'm sick and tired of watching that same rerun every week of him catching a 70-yard bomb. His classic 2 or 3 target game for 70 yards and a touchdown. I'm sick of it already.
I mentioned him on the show last week. I was talking about how every week he gets left alone by the secondary for a 70-yard bomb, and it happened again. He's a good cheap option just because that at some point he's going to be left wide open 80 yards down the field.
Yeah, Coolers mentions BTJ as a sneaky play. I could see it if they start passing more, but I don't have a lot of faith in the Jags offense here. It's just tough for me to get there. It's a low total game. I think there's more environments that I want to get to, at least in smaller field.
We didn't talk about this during the Bills thing, but I do think that there's enough value out there this week that you could do naked Josh Allen and with the Rams receiver or with Kyren. I do think that's in play. There's enough good, cheap plays that you can make that work. For example, right? You want to play Calvin Ridley, but you don't want to play Levis, or you want to play BTJ. You don't want to play Mac Jones. You play Josh Allen instead. I think there's routes that works. I mean, we've seen him run the ball enough.
Yeah, I mean,
he even throws the ball to himself, so he catches his own touchdowns now. I mean, you don't even need a receiver anymore.
Yeah, that's elite usage.
Yeah.
I think a good game from Kyren slows the pace down too much. Depends on how they're using them or how they're using him.
Yeah.
I don't know. It does worry me because the Bills have been sort of more run heavy as of recent. And they're okay doing that if they're able to, but it's kind of hard to see a game script where Kyren is hitting a ton. And then, I mean, that's kind of the situation, right? Where the Rams are somehow controlling with Kyren and Josh Allen is forced to throw more than usual.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely can't do Kyren and Cook. But I do think there are routes for Kyron and Allen to work, but it would have to be like Rams go up early. It'd be like Kyron 2 rushing touchdowns in the first half or something to force the Bills to kind of speed it up.
Yeah, from this game though, I mean, yeah, 1 or 2 offs, maybe mini correlation stuff. In games that the Titans win, Tony Pollard's touch rate's usually really good, like in the high 20s, low 30s, and the TD equity's there. So, I kind of like it. The ownership's kind of tough to swallow, but I do think it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's just not exciting.
Yeah, exactly. He's a fine play.
Yep.
Let's go through position by position.
You want to talk about the Sunday night game?
FanDuel? Yeah, good call. Let me grab FanDuel. It's my Bolts. My Bolts are playing the Chiefs.
Your Bolts? Pass-heavy Bolts all of a sudden. The air raid.
Yeah. We just saw last week as I struggle to pull up the slate. Chiefs, I don't – is their defense getting worse, or did like the Raiders just like have their number, or like what's going on with the Chiefs?
It's probably more the Raiders have their number. I mean, they play them so often.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm worried about. I'm more worried about the Chiefs' ability to score with, for example, Buffalo or Baltimore, than I am about the defense.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of defense, the Chargers unit looked really good. If I can filter down here. Yeah, I mean, the defense is continuing to look good. I'm not quite sure how that's going to affect Patrick Mahomes, but I do think it'll give him more trouble than a lot of the teams he's faced recently, outside of the Broncos maybe, who again, gave him a bit of a trouble, and they almost came away with that game. So,
yeah, they're 4th right now in EPA per play. The defenses, but I mean, the Ravens did score 30 on them. The Ravens scored 30 on everybody. The Bengals scored a lot of points on them. Bengals scored on everybody. So I don't know. I do kind of like this game on FanDuel, I guess. I think you can get some Mahomes stacks in here that look pretty good on FanDuel.
Yeah, McConkey and Kelsey seem to be some pretty popular options from this game on FanDuel. Makes sense, right? I mean, McConkey is clearly the number one on the team, earns a ton of targets. I think he's at a 27% target share. His red zone usage is really good as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dobbins still not back. So there is still value here in the Chargers running backs, although the Chiefs are pretty good against the run, obviously. I just think there are ways that this game shoots out way more than we're expecting.
Who do you like as stacking options from the Chiefs?
Xavier Worthy.
Oh, no.
At like minimum salary. It's going to happen at some point. He's going to catch 2 touchdowns. It has to happen at some point.
Yeah.
He gets too many designed looks every game.
I mean, he's at the same price point as DeAndre Hopkins on FanDuel at least. And, ownership isn't high on either of them, but it's definitely skewed more towards DeAndre Hopkins. I'm sick and tired of watching Xavier Worthy drop balls or run out of bounds or just not get the job done. It's so frustrating.
Well, who would you rather play, Xavier Worthy or Quentin Johnson? It's like the same player.
I can't. No, I think Quentin Johnson's worse, honestly.
Yeah, true.
It's so painful to watch. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Chargers side, if they are being more pass heavy, I mean, it's Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnson still. They're still viable options. They obviously get fewer targets than Ladd McConkey, but higher ADOT stuff, and Quentin Johnson, especially down the field, is always a possibility. But the other possibility is whether or not he can bring the ball in. So,
yeah, I don't know what tight end ownership looks like on FanDuel, but you can probably do Disley as well in those for cheap.
Yeah, he has a ton of targets too, and we saw that workout. Was that last week that Disley hit? The Disley and McConkey?
Week before, right, against the Bengals?
Week before, yeah.
Whenever they played the Bengals, it hit.
Yeah, so
3 weeks ago.
And definitely viable if you think the Chargers are going to be passing the ball here. I don't really have a ton of interest in like Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt on the other side. Do you?
No.
If
I'm playing this game, I'm playing it like it's going to be like that Bengals Chargers games we saw on Sunday night.
Right on, yeah.
Monday night. I'm sorry, I think it was Monday night. I don't remember.
let's hit our position by position, give out our favorite plays respective to ownership. At quarterback, we've got Darnold, Levis, Murray, all projecting for higher than 10%. Who is standing out to you under that threshold?
Man, tough. Let's go with the leverage off Saquon and say Jalen Hurts here. Let's do the Hurts Brown stacks. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Tua at 3% against the Jets. Tua stacks have just been hitting recently, and the stacking partners are pretty clear for me. It's Johnny, Waddle, and Achane. So I like that against the Jets defense, who is more or less okay, and Dolphins at home have done pretty well. So give me Tua at 3%.
Makes sense to me. I'm about to say a Dolphin here.
Yeah, running back we've got Kamara, Garendo, Najee, Saquon up top, and then our 10% threshold starts with Tyron Tracy. Anybody on this list standing out to you? I mean, we got some real stinkers going on here.
Yeah, Achane.
Yeah, hard to say no, right?
Sub 10%, yeah. Hurts, Brown, Achane lineups. That's the ultimate leverage.
Yeah, for me, it's probably Kyron down here in this range. Just low owned and has touchdown equity, and it seems like he scores every week like Nick Westbrook. So I like that against the Bills team, who's more vulnerable on the ground than they are against the pass. Yep. Kind of a shout out here to Tank Bigsby going unowned at 5,100. He's in that same price point as Garendo. Yeah, he's looked better than ETN as far as efficiency goes on the ground, and should get more pass work if the game plays how the spread indicates, where Tennessee is controlling the game and Jacksonville's playing catch up. It could also be a pressure release valve for Mac Jones. So kind of like Tank Bigsby there as leverage, although it's much thinner of a play than Garendo.
Yep, Auburn legend Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to tight end. Tight end, I think this week is really interesting. I think Brock Bowers is like a smash play. I'll have a ton of him, but obviously he's above the ownership threshold, so can't really talk about him. But in general, like how do you be feeling about tight end on this slate as far as like roster construction goes?
I mean, the problem is all the tight ends I like have ownership. I'd probably under 10%. I'd probably just say Kittle. Everybody wants to play the other passing game options.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a chance that if Garendo fails here, it's probably because Brock Purdy had a huge game passing the ball. And we've seen Kittle's upside as a tight end. So that's probably what I would go with, sub 10%.
Yeah, I like that as leverage. Jonnu at 8% too. I'll just also give a shout out. He's a number one receiving option on the team, and
yeah,
implied team total of like 24ish or so. I like that spot.
Yep.
Wide receiver, we've got chalk coming in on Jennings, London, Myers up top. Starting our list with Keenan Allen. Any of these low-owned guys standing out to you?
Man, I don't know. Who's yours? You go first.
So your boy AJ Brown and Devonta Smith are down here at 2% or so.
Yeah, but I already said Hurts. It's kind of cheating to take Brown.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say no, I don't want to. Let's just go with AJ Brown for the leverage off Saquon.
Right on.
See, this one goes out for all the people who say I'm an Eagles hater. I love the Eagles. The Eagles have treated me well over the years.
Blaine's stacking the Eagles this week. Let it be known.
I like playing the Eagles. They have a really good offense and a really good defense. I'm not a hater.
You're referencing Devontae Adams here? Coolers, I'm imagining.
Yep. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah.
Where's Garrett Wilson too as well? He would. Where's his? Is he cheaper and more on then? Or is he super low?
Wilson 2%, Adams 7%.
Yeah, either one. I mean, the nice thing, like I said about the Jets offense, is we know exactly where the production is going. It was between Hall, Wilson, or Adams, and lately it's been Adams. But yeah, I mean, I do think like if the Jets score, it's going to be between Braylon Allen, Devontae Adams, or Garrett Wilson. So any one of those three looks pretty good to me if you're playing pieces from the Dolphins.
Yeah, I like Darnell Mooney at 6% as a pivot off of chalk Drake London. We talked about that earlier. I think that's a good spot, but I'll also give a quick shout out. I saw him down here somewhere. Where's he at?
And Jordan Addison as well for me. Now that you brought up Mooney, Jordan Addison from that same game makes a lot of sense as the pass catching low own option with a high ceiling.
Yeah, I like Amari Cooper too, basically unowned. Josh Allen naked or like a Josh Allen plus Amari Cooper skinny stack. Kind of like that. He's had like a pretty consistent role and on the offense. And if you're going to stack him with somebody, you might as well go with somebody who's unowned. So I like Cooper for that reason. Yeah, good mention too. Breece Hall probably not going to play. It brings Braylon Allen into the game.
Yeah, but he's over the 10% threshold. Otherwise, he would have been mine over Durando for the cheap running back.
Yeah, it's a good spot to note leverage at the same price point for a running back. Defense, we always talk about it. I mean, play whoever, and the Saints seem to be pretty chalky against Drew Lock. So
yeah, that's almost like an auto fade for me in a game with a 40 total, 20 plus on defense. Totals are good for defenses because it means the defense has a better chance to score touchdowns.
And then the Giants also are probably just going to run the ball with Tyrone Tracy a ton. There's going to be opportunities for sacks, sure. And Drew Lock's not a great quarterback, but I think the limited passing volume on the offense is going to be enough for where Saints don't have a ton of opportunities to score. Yeah,
you can do Bears, I think, at super low salary here, especially if Trent Williams doesn't play. I mean, this is in the season from hell from the Niners. It wouldn't surprise me if the Bears scored like 2 defensive touchdowns in this game at all. Especially with if Trent Williams, I'm not sure what his status is right now. He had that, I don't know. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Personal issues.
Yeah, if you're going cheap defense, I mean, Titans are still pretty chalky, but coming in with 10 points less ownership than the Saints, I like that spot against Mac Jones. I tend to, I tend to believe that there's more opportunity for the Titans defense to score than there is the Saints. So.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Right on.
You could do Falcons defense as well. Darnold has not been afraid to throw picks.
Yeah.
For another like really cheap defense. But I mean, it's also pretty thin, right? I mean, I think the Vikings have like one of the highest team totals in this, like 25.5.
Yeah, you could flip the defensive stuff too and just go Giants defense, who are not a great unit, but I mean, the Saints offense is so depleted that I think there's opportunities for stuff to go crazy there, and they're cheap and unowned, so good leverage off the other side.
Yep. And yeah, I expect for this week, I'll be playing on DraftKings this week. I expect I'll be under on Saints and over on a lot of these teams in the single digits.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I did run a sim earlier for the show we can take a quick look at. One thing I wanted to see just in general is how the sims felt about Jameis stacks with the opposing defense. I believe I set my rules up to allow for it. Yeah.
You probably would have to, there's one. You'd probably have to tweak the correlations a little bit for him. I don't remember what the default is for quarterbacks against defense, but with him, you might want to lower that a little bit, make it a little more neutral. Because right now it's a correlation, obviously.
So it looks like we got 19 lineups in the sim with the Steelers defense.
Are any of them good? Where's the others?
Not 19. There's actually quite a few of them. 19 is the filter up top. ROI, ROI on these ones up top look fairly good. We've got like Winston, Judy, and Njoku Steelers. How many of these are? Yeah, like 2 and 3 stacks.
I think Winston with Steelers has to have 2 Browns pass catchers. Just thinking through how that would possibly work, because Jameis has to throw the 2 touchdowns or whatever, like against the Broncos. They need to have a lot of volume. And I think in order for like that combination to work, I don't think you can get there with a single stack and Steelers.
Yeah, I'll hit a refresh here and we'll just check exposures and kind of see where things shake out with minimal tweaking and minimal effort.
There's Braylon Allen. I did not see his results beforehand, and Braylon Allen just spiking in ownership.
Yeah, Sims do seem to like that. So we got Baker, Purdy, Levis, Murray, and Winston up top for quarterback stacks in the Sims untouched. Braylon Allen over Isaac Guerrero in the Sims. They seem to prefer that as leverage. I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
Do you see
I don't need the Sims. I'm like Utica. I just run the Sims in my head.
Exactly. No surprise we got Brock Bowers leading tight ends. I love that spot, followed by Otton and Njoku and Jonnu. I tend to like Njoku and Jonnu a lot more than Otton. I'd probably move that Otton ownership towards those players. Kittle a bit lower, but higher than his projected ownership, which indicates that he could be some leverage in the sim. Not bad.
Nope.
Receivers, there's Cooler's pick, Devontae Adams. So you're
Darius
first.
Slayton and Wandale. Oh my god.
Uh-oh.
And Debo. Oh man, what a week.
We're in for some pain.
Yeah.
And the defense just shook out the way it did. Looks like Saints are pretty popular. Yeah, is what it is.
What happens if you hard cap the Saints to like 10% or something?
Looks like Jags, Niners, and Titans filter up.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, anything else you want to tell the good folks before we get out of here?
No, I'll put projections up tonight and then probably update them tomorrow and then one more time on Sunday.
Right on. So good luck in your contest this weekend, guys. Remember, if you're new here, go to acemind.io. We're still running our Black Friday deal. You can get 30% off your first month using promo code BF30. Website's in the top left, promo code's in the bottom right. Be sure to join our Discord, follow us on Twitter, do all that stuff. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, thank you.
See you guys.